Welcome to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books, hosted by me, Zibby Owens. It's an award-winning podcast with over 1,900 episodes, all featuring authors of books you love and those you have yet to discover. Listen daily 5 times a week. Then go to zibbymedia.com and learn more about what the LA Times called the Zibbyverse. Zibby Media includes Zibby's Bookshop, an independent bookstore in Santa Monica, Zibby Books Publishing, Zibby Retreats, Zibby's Book Club, and more. Go check it out at zibbymedia.com and follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens. It'll take you where you need to go. Thanks for listening. Bianca Bosker is the author of Get the Picture, a mind-bending journey among the inspired artists and obsessive art fiends who taught me how to see. Bianca is the New York Times bestselling author of Cork Dork and now more recently Get the Picture. A contributing writer at The Atlantic, she has also written for publications such as The New Yorker, The New York Times, and The Wall Street Journal. Her work has been recognized with awards from the New York Press Club, the Society of Professional Journalists, and more, and has been included in the Best American Travel Writing. Welcome, Bianca. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss Get the Picture, a mind-bending journey among the inspired artists and obsessive art fiends who taught me how to see. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It's so nice to speak with you.
It's my pleasure. And I'm so excited that we got to connect at the LA Times Festival of Books and made this happen. Awesome.
They really put the festival in book festival, I would say, right? I mean, the food, the music, it just felt so celebratory. I loved it. I didn't want it to end.
Yeah. I mean, I was a little tired, I have to be honest, but it was great. Well, your book is fabulous. I'm not surprised. It became an instant New York Times bestseller. Congratulations, though. That must have felt amazing, right?
Thank you. Yes. So exciting. It's like, the book was 5 years in the making. And, I think every author obviously wants their book to find as many readers as possible. And so it was a dream come true.
It's amazing. Well, all the experiences that you write about and all the time spent, I mean, it's obvious. It's like people have to give you a hats off to spending your life doing all these things and then writing about it at the same time so the rest of us don't have to do it. Right? Isn't that the thing? It's like we get to learn through you and live vicariously, and yet we're not like in Miami or at an arc, all the things that you do. So congratulations. It's exciting. So tell listeners more about the book.
Yeah, so I would say that my short elevator pitch, which I have honed at dinner table parties, or at dinner parties and at cocktail parties, by just kind of seeing when people's eyes glaze over, is that it is about the years I spent disowning my regular life as a journalist to sell art at galleries, work with artists in their studios, patrol museum wings as a security guard, and more, all as part of this journey to understand why does art matter and how do any of us engage with it more deeply. And to me, the book is part user guide to the hidden logic of the art world, which is very hidden and very deliberately hidden, and also a quest to learn how to live life more expansively. I mean, this book for me really started from a place of not appreciating art, of not knowing how to engage with art, of feeling like I was, I didn't know enough, I didn't belong. And something clicked for me where I began to have this deep gnawing fear that by turning my back on art, I was missing out on something really big. And the people also really drew me in. I am a writer who is obsessed with obsession. And there was this magnetic passion of people in the art world that just intrigued me. I mean, I'd never met a group of people willing to sacrifice so much for something of so little obvious practical value. And they also had this really intriguing approach to the world. I felt like I was living this claustrophobic existence, whereas they had this expansive lease on life. They acted like they'd access these trap doors in their brains. And they also told me I lacked visual literacy, which they said was downright dangerous in a world so saturated with images. They pitied me. And it got me really intrigued on whether I could see art and whether I could see the world the way they did and what might change if I could. And as you said, my way of trying to figure that out was to insert myself in the middle of the action.
Wow. I love how at the end you're like looking at the supermarket in a whole different way.
Yeah, really. I mean, art, yes, opened me up to experiencing beauty in so many more places than I ever did before, but also experiencing the everyday, the way that we experience art, right? Yes, that. I write about this experience of, standing in the frozen food section, and I was totally sober at the time, but sort of having this experience of being like, oh my God, all of this is an art project. Like, what if it was? I mean, and there's something really exciting about that. And artists do that. They have this ability to walk down the street and sort of examine like a parked car as though it's a sculpture and take that extra beat, linger on just the sort of miraculous fragility and impossibility of the everyday around us and experience that jostle that we get from art everywhere.
Have you figured out what makes someone inherently an artist?
I mean, I do believe that there is an artist in each of us to some extent. I do think that artists, like capital A artists, people who self-describe as artists, who work in studios with, paint or computers or cameras, what have you, certainly there is this sense in which it is not even a decision. Like I remember asking, artists, why they did what they did. And their answers made it sound like I was asking them why they eat food or drink water. They were like, well, that's just what I have to do to survive, or it's just the way I was born. And they really described it as, less a career than just kind of a lifestyle, an existence. And I think by that same token, I should say that my book and my journey really focused on emerging up and coming artists, which to me, these are people who occupy the highest stakes and least covered part of the art world. We hear so much about the big money, the big names, and it is not at all representative of most people's experience of the art world. I mean, most people are like, every sale is a celebration. Artists are scrimping on rent so that their art can live better than they do, right? Like the art sleeps soundly in their studio. They're waking up on a friend's couch covered in cat pee. And I wish that was a hypothetical, but it's not. And I think that there's often this way in which artists are described as these dreamers and sort of like fanciful people. And on the one hand, they do have this fascinating approach to life that we can each learn from. And on the other hand, they are freaking survivors. They are people that just can figure out how to put one step in front of another and both keep the lights on, but also keep doing what feeds their souls. And just going back to the artist in each of us, I write about how, for me, I believe that I came to this understanding that art is, as scientists and artists tell us, fundamental to the human experience because it helps us fight the reducing tendencies of our minds. And I believe that there is an artist in each of us to the extent that we struggle to keep our brains, which they do automatically, from compressing our experience of the world. Art is a choice. It's a fight against complacency, and it's a decision to live a more complex, more nuanced, more interesting, and more beautiful life. But you have to work at it. It doesn't just happen. You got to work at it.
I mean, it's not so different from writing in a way, right? It's how you see the world. What makes someone a writer? Why do you do it? Like all the same questions you could put to writing a little bit, right? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that, I got very interested in this question of what is art exactly, prompted by an experience I had in which a nearly naked performance artist sat on my face for an art performance and raised a lot of questions for me about, where does art begin and end? How do we know it? How do we recognize it? And I was interested
and what am I doing with my life?
And I think that I was really interested to learn that, first of all, the experts have largely thrown up their hands at defining art, but also that for thousands of years, art was really considered anything involving human ingenuity and skill. And so when we talk about art these days, we tend to think of it in this narrow bandwidth of painting, sculpture, maybe poetry. But it used to be that art was anything like passing laws, training horses, blowing glass, carving marble. And so while my own business card doesn't include the word artist on it, I do think that this is a question that I've been grappling with, and the conversation I've been having with a lot of readers about, well, is a writer an artist, right? And is a nonfiction writer an artist? Is a journalist an artist? And I will say I've had interesting experiences of going to art exhibits and museums and seeing some of the work. I remember there was one video piece in particular, and I was like, that's our video art? I was like, that's journalism to me. You sort of made a documentary. And so these are really interesting, porous lines. But yeah, I don't know. I'm still grappling with whether or not I get to call myself an artist. I'm
still impressed you have business cards.
Well, they still have my old books cover on them. I haven't gotten the new ones made. So.
I actually just got some really cute business cards from this this art place we're doing this collab with called Felix Doolittle. And I was like, well, maybe I'll get these business cards and I'll start giving them out. And now I bring them in this little tin. I'm like, I feel so important.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I don't know if anyone ever does anything with them, but it makes me feel like I've done something by giving someone this. It's just a small offering.
Exactly. Yeah. But now then I get people's cards and then I get home from these conferences. I'm like, what do I do with all of these? And then I shove them in a drawer and I don't know. I'm a waste. It's a waste. But anyway. So go back even further. So I saw you went to Princeton, but tell me like your life before then and when you knew you were someone who was obsessed with obsession or however you said it earlier, which is so cool.
So I would say, I grew up in Portland, Oregon. I was an only child, so I did a lot of reading. Books are a very good one-person activity. And I will say that I was obsessed with art. I mean, art was a huge part of my life. Like a lot of kids growing up, I painted. And in high school, I actually flirted with applying to art school. And then at some point, adult Bianca grabbed the wheel. In college, I studied economic, I was an East Asian studies major. I learned Chinese, spent a lot of time in China, but like I took classes in economics, never took classes in art history, took a few art classes along the way, and then kind of consoled myself with this idea that if I wasn't going to be an artist, at least I would appreciate art. And that dream lasted about as long as it took me to move to New York and try to start seeing art on a regular basis, where I just felt like I was totally out of my league. And as I said, kind of backed off. And for a long time, we weren't on speaking terms. But through college, I did a lot of writing and journalism. I was a part of a group called the University Press Club, where we were like local student freelancers for publications, which is so fun. I got to get paid and write for professional editors at places like the Trenton Times. And I did a brief detour into the world of management consulting for various reasons. Didn't stick for a lot of other reasons, and returned to journalism. I worked at HuffPost for a few years and then quit to train as a sommelier. And that journey became my book, Cork Dork. I wrote a book before that about Chinese architecture, a more academic book. And then I've been working as a journalist and author and perhaps artist, I don't know what we want to call it, ever since.
Wow, that's amazing. So after you first of all, when you were going through all of these experiences, did you always know that you were doing it to make it a book in the end? And did you approach it differently? And how did you record all of that in the time to remember? Were you like journaling every day? Or did you say like, I'm just going to figure it out and maybe it'll be a book?
Yeah. So, I mean, I will say that as a journalist, I have the sickness that infects a lot of journalists, which is to say that I can't do anything without thinking that it could become a story. Mm-hmm. Like I go on vacation and I'm like, oh, interesting. Like maybe this could become a story, And, I think that my brain is very much flypaper and I'm just constantly looking for ideas and inspiration. And so that's sort of the approach I take to everything, which is not always the healthiest, but that's who I am. And I will say that, for this, I embarked with this idea, look, you can't take anything for granted with a piece of writing. I'm always like, I'll believe it when I see it. Like when it's there and it's printed and it's live, like then I can say I have written a book. And until that point, it's just, you're kind of keeping your fingers crossed. But no, I was going into it with this idea that it could become a book. And, for readers who aren't familiar with the book, as I alluded to before, I did take a somewhat untraditional approach to the reporting. I did interviews, I read books. You can see a lot of them behind me. These are actually like stacked too deep. There's a lot of art books and there's more that I'm staring at around. But I also believe in learning by doing. And so I decided that I wanted to go and work in the art world. I wanted to figure out how it worked, how, like I said, any of us could engage with art more deeply by throwing myself into the center of the action. Because I think, first of all, the miraculous often emerges from the mundane. Mm-hmm. And I also felt like from my last experience with Cork Dork, it's one thing for an art dealer to politely tell you how they sell a painting. And it's another, as I've now experienced, to spend 5 days on your feet schmoozing millionaires during Art Basel Miami Beach's fairs and selling thousands of dollars worth of art from the backseat of an Uber while people are doing cocaine around you. And those give you different insights into what's really going on. And so along the way, I took notes in notebooks. I recorded audio. I would make notes to myself just about what I was experiencing and what I was feeling and what I was thinking about. And it was very funny to kind of read back some of the early notes that I made to myself as I got further on in the journey. Because I was like, oh, how embarrassing that you didn't know that, Bianca. Or like, how embarrassing you didn't know who that artist was. Or like, how could you not have understood this, that, the other? But the reality is that the art world is very opaque by design. I think that there is a way in which it views secrecy as key to its survival. And it's true that there are a lot of things that go on that could pass for absurd, unethical, illegal anywhere else. And so if you haven't taken this sort of mafia-like vow of silence, you're viewed as a risk. And as a journalist, it was very difficult getting access. To me, surprisingly difficult getting access into this world. It was also, though, a different experience. I had also, done some recording for my last book. And in that case, I was drinking a lot of wine. And so I remember in particular listening to one audio recording of myself tasting through these wines during a wine tasting. And it was a really horrific experience to listen to myself getting drunk. Like as the audio goes on, I'm like, you're getting very loud. You're beginning to slur your words. Like this is just, ugh. So I already am not wild about listening to my voice. Thank you to podcast listeners for listening to my voice. I don't know if any of us like hearing our voice recorded back to us, but that was a particularly cringeworthy experience.
Oh my gosh. And so what are you diving deep into now, if anything?
Yeah, well, so I have for the last few months, Get the Picture came out a couple months ago. And so I have been diving deep into the world of helping it find its way into the world. And so I've been on book tour. Obviously, we got to meet in LA for the Festival of Books. And now I'm beginning to think about, yes, what's next? So I have a couple of stories in the works. I'm a contributing writer at The Atlantic, so I write most regularly for them. So I have a few kind of things that are simmering, a couple pieces in the works still about the art world, and then beginning to open myself up to try and think about what might be the next adventure. I mean, I think these books, for me, emerge out of an intellectual curiosity, but also a kind of spiritual hunger. I think that this book took 5 years, and for something to sustain you that long, I think it requires more than just, like I said, a kind of intellectual curiosity and rather some kind of human need that I need to figure out. And both books for me grew out of these encounters with these incredibly passionate people who really knocked me off my axis. They really made me wonder if everything I thought about how to live life was wrong. And that sent me into these journeys to try and uncover a different way of looking at wine, a different way of looking at art, but also, like I said, a different way of living. And I do feel that the immersion in the art world has done that for me. I mean, my whole relationship with color, for example, is totally different. I mean, I've never thought of color as being a hedonistic experience, like biting into like a fatty, juicy burger. And now it is. There is a building on the Upper East Side that is this glows this orange in the late afternoon sun that literally moved me to tears. And I am not a crier. And, or that experience of being open to experiencing art everywhere. I went recently to the American Dream Mall in New Jersey, which, if you haven't been, is, I mean, an absurd art installation in its own right. Like it has an indoor full beach, it has an indoor amusement park, it has ice skating rinks, it has an aquarium, it has many other things. I have a train. Anyway, and I remember going through the aquarium and I was like, anyway, it's a total trip. And I was like, these are sculptures, man. This is incredible. And I think that there's something really exciting about that ability to keep seeing the world with new eyes that art helps us to accomplish and integrate into our lives.
So you're obviously incredibly bright and articulate and passionate and all of this stuff. And now you've had great success with the book. Are you happy?
Love that question. Well, thank you for the kind words. I am happy. I think I'm as happy as, any of us can be. I don't know. I mean, I feel I love that question, which I've never been asked in an interview, but no, I feel very fortunate and fulfilled. And I think, look, I am someone for whom books have always been just a kind of North Star. I mean, I am someone who doesn't get really excited about seeing movie celebrities, but if I'm in a room with a writer, I start sweating. If there's a writer that I admire, my heart starts pounding. I'm trying to figure out what am I going to say to, introduce myself. Anyway, a man on the street in New York that I pass probably quarterly that I am convinced is Gay Talese, and one day I will work up the nerve to say hello to him. It probably isn't Gay Talese. I'm just probably thinking all elderly, well-dressed men look the same. I don't know. But since Get the Picture came out, I have been just so thrilled to hear from a lot of readers who have written in to share how much the book resonated with them and to share the sort of things that they see in the book that I see in the books that I love the most. The way that the book continued, the journey of the book for them continued beyond the pages of the book, if that makes sense. And so that is a thrill. That does make me so happy. And, I think at the same time, as a writer, I'm not going to lie, like writing is agony and ecstasy. Like in the moment when I'm writing it, I'm happy because there's nothing else I'd rather be doing. And I'm also miserable because it's hard and I'm wrestling with so much crippling doubt. And I'm like, every piece, I feel like I sit down to the blank page and I'm like, how? How do I do that? And that's part of the excitement, is that every piece is different. Every piece is its own challenge. Every piece forces you to learn something new about the world and about your craft. So, and then, aside from that, I'm very lucky to be happy outside of my writing endeavors as well. Knock on wood.
Awesome.
Are you happy?
I don't know what made me ask that. I was just like curious. You're so, I don't know, like analytic and this is going well and da, da, da. And I was just like, I'm wondering, like, when the camera's not on. I don't know. It's none of my business, but thank you for allowing me to ask. Am I happy?
No,
yes.
It's
I am happy too. I am happy right now. But, it's not to say I wasn't like crying yesterday. Like things.
Of course. I know. Try me in an hour. Let's see how it's going.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I feel like you've, already sort of imparted advice by the way that you're talking about your writing journey and process. And, implicit in that is, to find something that is worth your time to research and dedicate and yourself and write about and all of that. But what other advice would you have for aspiring authors and journalists?
Yeah, well, I think that first of all, writing is, you just have to do it, right? I mean, I think that there's, and that is the hardest part, is actually doing the writing. I mean, I can't tell you the number of things I will do to avoid actually writing. I mean, my like the grout in the shower is never cleaner than when I'm on deadline. um, like urgent chores that I will invent to get out of wrestling with a sentence is, truly a testament to human creativity. I will say that, I think that on the one hand, the industry is an absolute mess. On the other hand, there are more outlets perhaps than ever to write for.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to say that you're going to get the money you probably deserve for what you're writing. But nonetheless, I do think that when it comes to writing, it's important to build up, especially for journalists, I think it's important to build up a body of clips, right? Which means like articles that you have written. I think if you're an aspiring nonfiction author, I think that's also helpful. I do think that there is something really wonderful, for all of its flaws, about the world of journalism and nonfiction, which is that any good editor can't say no to a great story idea. Mm-hmm. So if you have a fabulous idea, and what is a fabulous idea may depend on the publication. Like, what is the right story for The Atlantic may not be the right story for Food and Wine or, I don't know, Bloomberg Business Week. But I do think that is kind of an incredible ticket in, if you can find it. And then I think that, the other piece, I think it's just practice. It really is just practice. And again, it doesn't get easier with practice, but nonetheless, parts of it get easier. And I think you become less precious. And I think I at least have found, and I learned a lot actually from artists. There was an artist I worked with, Julie Curtis, who really helped me to understand the process of creating and not be freaked out by it. I think, she just sort of made peace with the fact that there are going to be these predictable challenges along the way. There is going to be this feeling of breakdown at some point with the work. There will be a point where you think you can't move any further with it, and all hope is lost. And then you just move through it, and you just push through it, and you just figure it out. And I love that, because I do not have that equanimity about me. But I do think that just revising is the other thing. I do think maybe the difference between like good writers and great writers is just the difference between draft 2 and draft 12.
That's a great soundbite. I love that. Amazing. Bianca, thank you so much. I'm so impressed. I can't wait to read what you write next. And I'm now going to start following along on all your Atlantic pieces and doing more of a deep dive. I don't know. Deep dive. I don't know. Anyway.
The retrospective, it would say.
Yeah,
in the art world, yes.
Exactly. The retrospective. Bianca Bosker, retrospective. Yeah. Anyway. All right. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure speaking with you. Have a great day. And hope we all stay happy. Hope all of our listeners are happy too.
I agree. Yes. You too.
Take care.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you love it, please leave a review and follow us on social at Zibby Owens and at Zibby Readers.